Hello there my RPG lovers and welcome to another video. Elex 2 has been announced not so long ago. In the previous Elex 2 video I made, we talked about some major features that you'll be able to see in the sequel. We talked about the ability to fly with your jetpack, the air combat and all the gameplay changes that we are currently aware of. However, I think I was wrong when it comes to the release dates. I said that Elex 2 is probably coming out next year, possibly at the end of summer. If the sequel is actually coming out next year, I highly doubt that Piranha Bytes would put coming soon as the release date. In the newest video from Piranha Bytes, they actually said that the marketing campaign for Elex 2 is going to last for only a couple of months. So I think it's safe to say that we're going to get Elex 2 in the current year. But yeah, anyway, in this video we're going to talk about every little piece of information that I missed in the previous video. Before we continue with the video, a quick word from today's sponsor. Opera GX is the first browser in the world that's built for gamers and it's entirely free. It has a lot of useful features which are integrated in the browser itself. For example, you can easily see your Twitch notifications on the sidebar and never miss your favorite streamer. You can also check your Discord and every major messenger app like WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger. But this wouldn't be a gaming browser without any actual gaming features. You have the Control tab, which allows you to limit your CPU and RAM usage, which is especially useful if you don't want to close your browser while you're gaming. So you don't have to worry about the RAM-eating monster anymore. GX is also equipped with an import tool that allows you to quickly import all of your settings from your previous browser to GX, like browsing history, bookmarks and cookies. All of that can be done in just a couple of clicks. But my personal favorite is the GX Corner feature, which helps you to stay up to date with free games and best deals. Opera GX team is manually selecting these games and more often than not, you will find some great discounts. You can easily select your platform and besides that you have a release calendar for the upcoming games, which is pretty cool. And last but not least, Opera GX allows you to customize your browser however you want, although I think the default version looks pretty good. Thank you Opera GX team for sponsoring this video. You can get this browser by using my link in the description and just remember it's totally free. The first thing I want to talk about is this little segment from GameStar article about Elex 2. Elex 2 is more Gothic 2 than Risen 2. Believe it or not, this is actually a pretty big deal. Gothic 2 was basically Gothic 1 but with a lot of improvements, new story and the same but extended map. Risen 2, however, almost completely changed everything that Risen 1 established. I think that was one of the biggest mistakes that Piranha Bytes ever made. When it comes to Elex 2 and Gothic 2, this was actually kinda obvious. I talked about this even before Elex 2 got announced. I was speculating about the map in Elex 2 and how Piranha Bytes is going to design it. Doing something similar like in Gothic 2 made the most sense, because Elex 2 is more Gothic 2 than Risen 2. In concrete terms, it primarily continues the strengths of the predecessor instead of breaking with them. It expands instead of revolutionizing. You get a comparable open world, comparable fights, a comparable narrative style, and you guessed it, comparable open-mouthed moments. In the open world segment from this article, they said that Elex 2 offers a new open world that consists partly of old lands and partly of new regions. The old areas have been changed drastically over the years and by the hearts of the world, but you also travel to completely new areas. So overall, like in Gothic 2, yeah, old areas will be almost unrecognizable, but we are getting completely new areas as well. If you completed Elex 1, it was kinda obvious that the setting of the sequel will be on the same map. The next bullet point says that children are now a part of the playworld. This is another thing that I forgot to mention in the previous video. Having children in open world RPGs is always a controversial topic, simply because if you have the option to kill them, that would definitely spark a lot of controversy amongst people. And if you can't kill them, that could break the immersion. If we look at Skyrim for example, the children in that game have the essential NPC status, which means that you can't kill them. When you reduce their health to 0, they are basically just knocked down, like any other essential NPC that can't be killed. I know for a fact that a lot of people hate the essential NPC system, so it's going to be really interesting to see how Piranha Bytes will handle this. The lack of kids in Piranha Bytes games have never actually bothered me a lot, only if I start really thinking about it. Since immersion is one of the most important things in Piranha Bytes games, I think this is a good decision overall. Your jetpack not only allows you to float, but you can also jet through the landscape like Boba Fett. But only after a few upgrades. We talked about the ability to fly with your jetpack in the previous video, and I expressed my concern about this feature. I said if it's not done properly, it could easily destroy the exploration. It's basically the same concern that I had with Elex 1 when I heard about the jetpack. But after I played Elex 1, I absolutely loved how jetpack worked. It had just enough fuel to help you explore the extremely vertical map of the first game. If all of a sudden you can fly with no restrictions, it's easy to see how the exploration could be compromised. But I didn't know that flying with your jetpack is locked behind a few upgrades. I'm still not completely convinced that flying is a good idea, but we'll see. I wonder how hard it's going to be to upgrade the jetpack in order to fly, and I wonder if it's locked behind a certain faction. In the first game, you almost immediately get a jetpack and that's it. Besides the ability that allows you to attack with your weapon while floating, but yeah, that's pretty much it. The nights in Elex 2 are significantly darker than in the predecessor, but hey, you got a flashlight for that now. I welcome this design decision with open arms because I think that more open world RPGs should have darker nights. However, Elex 1 nights were not actually that bright compared to Skyrim's nights, for example. And I might be crazy, but I could swear that nights were a bit darker before the last patch for Elex rolled out. The thing is, I found myself using torches a lot in Elex 1 when I'm in dark places. It's basically essential sometimes. Besides Elex, I'm also replaying Dragon's Dogma on my Switch, and the nights in that game are dark as fuck. You can't see anything without the lantern. But the setting in Elex 2 is a lot different, there are a lot of different lightning sources, so it's going to be interesting to experience the exploration at night. Let's move to the story and quest segment of this article. You play again as Exiled Jax, but there will be no save game import from Elex 1. As in GOTHIC 2, you lose your skills and can decide again which path your non-nameless hero can take. To be honest, I'm slightly disappointed with no option to transfer your save date from the first game, because it would be a logical thing to do. The part about losing your skills is obvious, you have to start as a fresh character somehow. This is explained further in the next bullet point. Anyone who has played Elex 1 will know a new threat hangs over the world. But nobody wants to believe Jax, which is why he fell out with old factions and went into exile. In Elex 2 he returns from Oblivion to convince people of his cause. So the faction you chose in Elex 1 ultimately doesn't matter, that's probably why the option to transfer your saves doesn't exist. According to Piranha Bytes, none of their games had as many dialogues and storylines as Elex 2. By the end of the credits, you are busy an average of 60 hours, or significantly longer if you want to 100% the game. And the factions mean there is always a high replay value. My first Elex playthrough was about 80 hours, and I certainly didn't do everything that I could. You can easily get more than 100 hours in the first game if you want to see and complete everything. Not to mention the replay value with other factions, you can see everything that the game has to offer in only one playthrough. So if Elex 2 has a lot more dialogues and storylines, it's only logical to expect that it's longer than the first game. I'm currently playing Elex 1 again, and it just reminded me how much dialogues and storylines it has. It's an impressive amount and more than enough for a lengthy playthrough. So when I hear that Elex 2 has a lot more dialogues and storylines than any other Piranha Bytes game, I almost find it hard to believe. There will be more than 3 factions, but the parties still represent certain character classes or weapon types. It's still unclear how many factions are completely new, but we speculate that at least Berserkers and Outlaws will return. The first Elex had 4 factions, the Arbs, Berserkers, Clerics and the Outlaws. 3 of those factions were joinable. So I wonder if Elex 2 will allow us to choose between 4 factions now. The first bullet point also confirmed that unique character skills and weapons are locked behind factions, which is not surprising at all. I wish we could get a bit more unique skills that are not tied to any factions though. I'll talk about this in my next video about Elex 1 that I'm currently working on. Further gameplay adjustments, little changes in the classes, you can play as a ranged fighter, magician, thug or mishmash. Because you are now more agile in the air, there is also pure air combat against other flying opponents. So Jax can fight gargoyles at a height of 20 meters. I'm curious about faction skills and how much will they change, and according to this bullet point, not very much I guess. But we're definitely going to see new skills, especially from those new factions in the game. The companion system returns. Jack hires familiar and new companions to accompany him through the rugged wilderness. As part of the quest, there should be significantly more decisions and hard consequences. Piranha Bytes drastically improved the companion system with Elex 1. Even Risen 3 had major improvements when it comes to companions, but they improved it even further in Elex. The first Elex game had around 7 companions, and all of them had a lot of dialogue lines for almost every quest you do and every NPC you interact with, which is quite impressive considering this is a AA RPG. They had unique quest lines that you could do, with some pretty interesting twists. As long as they continue in the same fashion with companions, I'll be happy. That's pretty much everything I wanted to cover in this video. I will keep posting updates about this game because it's one of my most anticipated RPGs. Like I said before, I'm working on a video about the first Elex game that will come out in a couple of days. It should be especially useful for people who never played it before. Don't forget to subscribe for more RPG content. If you want to support the channel in the long run, consider becoming a Patreon or a YouTube member. You can get your name on the end credits, as well as some other perks like early access to videos, Discord roles, my plans for future content, etc, etc. That will be all, and I'll see you in the next one.